is Luwali Mshokavanji, and today we'll be looking at nested for loops. Yeah, we're finally there. We're finally going to see what we can do with nested for loops. Yeah, too bad about curfew, going on lockdown. Yeah, things are getting serious in Zambia. So let's start off by starting the for loops. So this is nested for loops. We had looked at nested if statements back, and that's practically the same. That's the same thing. This is going to be a for loop inside another for loop. You can even do nested while loops depending on what kind of program you're writing. So the program that we're going to write today will be a program that's going to print the multiplication table. Yeah, that's almost everywhere, every exercise, to show how you can use the nested for loops. There are a lot of scenarios where you can use nested for loops, but with this one we're going to keep it simple, straight, and we're going to print out the multiplication table from 1 to 12. Yeah, it's been long since I did that, so we need two for loops in this case. We don't need to declare any actual variables outside the for loop, so let's get started. So we'll start with our for loop. Our multiplication table, what are the characteristics? We have row, then we have what? We have column. So I'll name my variables inside the loop as row and column. The outside for loop, the first for loop, that will represent my row. So say int row. Multiplication table will start from 1, of course. So int row 1 row. Please go back to for loops, the previous tutorials, if you don't understand this. We explained all this. So row will be less or equal to 12 because we want to somehow loop from 1 to 12. Yeah, and then what comes next? Yeah, row plus plus. We want to increment from 1 to 12, so that will be our row. And I wish I could show you an example for multiplication table. We'll place it at the side here so that you get to have a clear view. Yeah, so we have another for loop inside the first for loop. So we have another for loop. This is the first for loop. Then inside the first for loop, we're having the second for loop. So the second for loop, of course, we have row, meaning we're going to have column. So in this one, we're going to have int. I'll call this core. It also starts from 1. Yeah, then core will also be less or equal to 12. Yeah, then we also increment like that. So we'll come here. I'll show you a practical example right now. So in this kind of code, this is where we're going to write our code in the for loop that's inside if we want to print out a multiplication table. So let's do this. I'll quickly explain this. Let's say cout, we'll say row, and then we'll do this. Yeah, we'll put multiplication sign, then we'll say core, and I think that's about right. Then we'll do this. There's a reason why I'm doing this. I just want to leave a bit of space, and then semicolon. I don't want it to go to the next line. I want it to print everything in the same kind of line. Yeah, so now let's just end this. End there. So our row is the one that's starting first. It's to print out the row, the multiplication sign, then the column. So let's just compile and run this, and you'll see the rest just clear out. So here we go. It's a long table that we have here. So let's come up here. So we're saying 1 multiplied by 1, 1 multiplied by 2, 1 by 3, 1 by 4, 1 by 5, 6, until we get to 12. Once we get to 12, this changes to 2, and we restart. 2 by 1, 2 by 2, 2 by 3. Do you see what's going on? So here's I'll just do this way over here. Yeah, we'll do this in comments here. So we have 1 multiplied by 1, then after that we have 1 multiplied by 2, then we have 1 multiplied by 3. We will go on until we get to 1 multiplied by 12. Then after this it jumps. We start with the 2, and we start with multiplied by 1, and 2 multiplied by 2, and 2 multiplied by 3, and we go on until we get to 2 multiplied by what? Until we get to 2 multiplied by 12. And then when we get to 12, it's going to jump and we'll start our 3 multiplied by 1. So let's go through this. So while we're in this, when we get into the first for loop, our row will be 1. Understand? Our row will be 1. So when we come into the second for loop, our row is already 1. So this is the one that we're getting here. Then when we come into the second for loop, our core is 1. So we're saying print row and print what? The core, the column. So our row is 1 in this case, and our column is what? 1. And when we're done with this for loop, the second for loop, we won't go to the first for loop because this isn't yet done looping. So we're going to loop back and we're going to say core plus plus, meaning core will become 2, but row is still at 1 because we haven't yet terminated this loop. So row will still be 1. So when we come here, row is still 1, but column is now at 2 because we did the plus plus. It hasn't yet terminated out of this loop. Then when we loop again, it's going to be core plus plus, meaning core will now move from 2 to 3. But we haven't yet left this, so row is still 1. So row will still be 1, and column will now be what? 3. We'll continue increasing the value of column until we get to 12. So it's going to be 1 by 12. Row as 1, column by 12. And when we get to this 12, after 12, core will be 13, and this is going to be terminated once this is false. Remember the conditions when we talked about them the first time we made the for loops. So this will terminate, then it's going to come back up here and say what? Row plus plus. In this case, row was 1, but when it says row plus plus, row will now be what? Row will now be 2. Then we'll come in again, and this is going to repeat itself. Core will start from 1, while row is now at what? At 2. So we're going to have 2 by 1, 2 by 2, 2 by 3, until we get to 12. When we get to 12, the inside terminates. We go back up, we say row plus plus. Row will now change from 2. Row will now go to what? 3. And we'll repeat the same for the inside loop. It's going to be 3 multiplied by 1, 3 multiplied by 2, and so on and so forth. See, so when we actually print this, this is what we get. Yeah, this is what we get, 1 by 1. So this represents the row, and this represents the column. So row in the first round of the column, row will be 1. Once column gets to 12, row changes to 2, and column restarts from 1 to 12 again. So this cycle continues. So now let's have it print out the answers, and let's have it print out in a sort of tabular form. Yeah. So we're going to say cout row multiplied by column. So I'll just take the endl out, and we'll say will be equal to, then here we say I multiplied by j, just like this, because we wanted to carry out this operation, wanted to actually multiply these two and give us the actual value, print out the actual value. And we won't do the endl here, we just do the semicolon, meaning it won't go to the next line. We only want it to go to the next line after it's done printing out the row. So it's only going to be done printing out the row immediately after this this second for loop. That's when it's going to be done with the row. So after this second for loop, we come here. We come here. We do our cout. Basically, we are seeing out nothing. All we want is the end L. We want it to end line so that it goes to the next line. Let me just compound run this and let's see what we have here. Says I was not declared in this scope. Sorry, my mistake. We didn't declare any I or J. We declared row and core. So I have to say row multiplied by core. You know, I'm used to saying I and J. Sorry. So there we go. So let me just put this on a larger screen. Yeah. So it's a bit in tabular form. You can see it's disorganized, but yet it still stands. So 1 multiplied by 1 Alright, the white space issues here, let me just quickly add the white space issues. How to do this? We just need white space. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a lot of white space. Yeah, so we'll just leave some white space here, comma, so that you see where the white space applies. Let's compile and run this. Yeah, much better. So here we have 1 multiplied by 1 will give us 1, comma, that's where the comma comes in, that's the white space I was adding. 1 multiplied by 2 is 2, 1 multiplied by 3, 3. We continue until we get to 1 multiplied by 12 is what? 12. We're done with the first row. So the end, after we're done with the first row, we meet the end, we come to the second row, and you're going to find the second row starts with what? 2. 2 multiplied by 1, 2. 2 multiplied by 2, 4. 2 multiplied by 3, 6. 2 multiplied by 4, 8. We continue until we get to the end. 2 multiplied by 12, 24. We meet that end, we come to the third row, and we find that row is now what? 3. So basically that's what goes on until we get to 12, and 12 multiplied by 12 is giving us 144. So this is your multiplication table, and this is basically what you do. So this is an example of nested for loops. So it's a for loop inside another for loop. So this for loop is inside the first for loop, which is 7 to 15. So this is for loops in C++. This is how you get to print out your multiplication table, easy, square, and peasy. And we'll get to talk about arrays very soon. Then you're going to see how cool this really is and how we can make our program much better once we talk about arrays. So I want you to pause this program. I want you to go through this. This is all about logic. It's all about understanding. Don't worry about writing code. Worry about understanding. So next time we come, we're going to talk about how to calculate exponential. Yeah, we'll talk about factorial. We'll talk about all those calculations that you can work with through the for loop. So yeah, I hope I see you next time. Remember to subscribe to this.